On Pentecost Sunday, the church wraps itself in red in order to celebrate the birthday of the church. And on Reformation Sunday, the Sunday closest to October 31st, there has been a centuries-old tradition of bringing out a little red here and there in the church in recognition of a new birthday, a church born in a Reformation and torn from old ways. And so this is the story in a nutshell. In 1516, Johann Tetzel, a Dominican friar and papal commissioner for indulgences, was sent by the Roman Catholic Church to Germany to raise money to rebuild St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. And the church's theology stated that faith alone cannot justify humankind, but that only such faith as is active in charity and good works can do so. And this was translated by quite a stretch into a means of extracting money from people, money that they might be able to afford, with this false promise that the church would intercede on behalf of souls in purgatory in exchange. You know that uncle we had? He's probably not doing too well down there. And so you could go to a priest who would take care of this for you. And the saying that was attributed to Tetzel at the time was, as soon as the coin in the coffer rings, the soul from purgatory into heaven sings. They even had a theme song. On October 31st, 1517, 500 years ago this week, Martin Luther wrote a letter protesting the sale of indulgences. He enclosed in his letter a copy of his Disputation of Martin Luther on the power and efficacy of indulgences, which came to be known as the 95 Theses. Luther was said to have nailed these to the door of the cathedral at Wittenberg, the All Saints Church there, in time to be read on All Saints' Day. And the action was thought to have been the spark that started and lit the Protestant Reformation. Many people don't know that aside from being a theologian, Martin Luther was a gifted musician as well. Luther took a song that was sung in the beer halls, and he made it his own. He added words to "A Mighty Fortress is Our God" in 1529, and centuries later, a German Jewish poet, Heinrich Heine, was to call "A Mighty Fortress" the Marseillaise of the Reformation. And this description captured the importance of it because the song became an inspiration to Lutherans and the Reformed Church worldwide. Its melody forms the central theme to Meyerbeer's The Huguenots. Mendelssohn used it in his Reformation Symphony, and so did Bach in his sacred cantatas. Bill Coffin, a classical pianist as well as my preacher in New York, once said, "Everyone knows that Luther helped start the Reformation, but what few people know is that he started a hymnody, great word, by writing hymns in the vernacular for all the people to sing, which was unheard of at those times." In contrast, the Calvinist churches in England and Scotland and New England rejected any hymn that was, as they said, of human composure, allowing their congregations to only sing psalms that were made metrical. And so Luther used this 46th Psalm, which we've heard today, as a primary source of inspiration. God is our refuge and our strength. And here we are. A Reformed church is a church that is always reforming, questioning, rethinking, remaking itself into the vision of what it means to be a community that follows Jesus. Its collective conscience is itself captive to what its Creator is calling it to be. Could any of us be partakers in a tradition where we feel entitled to lift up prayers for ourselves and those nearest and dearest to us, as we've just done, without also believing that the same creative force is also in relation to people of other faiths, or people of no faith at all, or even to those who do not share the same nationality or worldview? Can we also not believe that this ground of being does not love creation, as Bishop Spong said in this room a few years ago, loving us wastefully and wantonly across all lines of gender, gender identity, race, sexual orientation. Our churches must be places where anyone could come through our doors and see that there are no stained glass ceilings, stopping anyone from serving as clergy or staff or even lay leadership positions. Transgender clergy are slowly being called to several of our mainline churches. In our tradition today, our United Church of Christ, women are now closing the gap on men in terms of called pastors. 53% of us are male, 47% are female. And as folks like me move up and get ready, retire, that gap is being filled quickly with more women. But there is still income disparity, which pokes a hole in this bubble of growing equality. Income disparity is one measure of how we demonstrate how we value women as opposed to men. Instead of talking about how far we've come, gosh darn it, shouldn't we instead be insisting that the gap be closed now, wherever it is, however it is, or if it's possible, there might even be legal repercussions for treating anyone, let alone half the world, as less than any Joe off the street. Children are taught earlier and well that there are privileges and unfairnesses that come with being born who we are. It is what it is. Most people grow up believing that they are what they are and end up accepting the status quo, which is a disservice to both women and men, who in turn teach those lessons to another generation. A reformed and reforming church must ask questions it would not have countenanced not so long ago. And I've had very little luck with this. I'm going to try it here. I'm just going to keep throwing it out. The importance of inclusive language in everything we do. In seminary, we were not allowed to speak using non-inclusive language, and I can see why. Could we, for example, please consider taking the word mankind out of our dictionaries? And yes, I know it encompasses both. Women and men fall under mankind. But isn't that a part of the problem? Our language. How about the use of the male pronoun when we talk about God? 20th century feminist theologian Mary Daly said it best, and most succinctly, she said, when God is man, then man is God. A reformed church is a church that is always reforming and questioning and rethinking and remaking itself into the vision of what it means to be a community that follows Jesus. Today, Jesus gives us these two great commandments once again. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind. This is the greatest and the first commandment. And a second one is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. So, well, gentlemen, if that is indeed the second greatest commandment, then we could do no less than to love our neighbor by making sure that she has all of the rights and protections and respect that we have been more than privileged to receive all of these centuries. Would you agree with me? And that means that the Harvey Weinsteins of this world need to go back under the rocks from which they came. We're provided with a small room at taxpayer expense for a good long stay. It also means, though, that we have to speak up and speak out when someone is out of line. And I know that is so much easier. It is easier to keep quiet, but we can't keep quiet any longer. We need better role models. And it's hard to find those when 3 of our 6 living presidents have been repeatedly sexually inappropriate with women. Over 10 years ago, a movement began through an activist named Tarana Burke. Burke worked as a counselor at a girls' camp, and a girl came to talk with her, and she opened up about her own sexual abuse. And Burke said she just could not hear it. This girl kept bringing up things that had happened to her, and she couldn't be present. She just finally said, I have to turn you over to another counselor, without explaining why. Burke said she never forgot the look on the girl's face. The shock, she said, of being rejected, the pain of opening a wound only to have it abruptly closed again. It was all on her face, she wrote. And I couldn't help her to release her shame or impress upon her that nothing that happened to her was her fault. I could not find the strength to say out loud the words that were ringing in my head over and over again as she tried to tell me what she had endured. I watched her walk away from me, and I watched her put her mask on her face and go back into the world like she was all alone. And I couldn't even bring myself to whisper, "Me too." The hashtag Me Too movement began, as she put it, in the deepest and the darkest place in her soul. Now, for those of you who don't have a Twitter account, or you're the remaining few who are hiding in the trenches of the Facebook resistance movement, these are the places where these conversations are happening. The hashtag caught fire recently when actress Alyssa Milano tweeted out a call out to a victim, she said, so we might give people a sense of the magnitude of the problem. It's enormous. If you've been online and if you're watching this, it's heartbreaking. I kept seeing it over and over and over again. A 40-year-old straight male friend and colleague wrote, "For what it's worth, me too." So many people I knew. It was powerful, it was important. This week there have been millions of responses. And today, men are responding to the call with 4 words: how I will change. Hashtag how I will change. An Australian writer, Benjamin Law, wrote, "Guys, it's our turn. After yesterday's endless hashtag Me Too stories of women being assaulted and harassed, today we say, how I will change." And here's a few examples of what people wrote in. In a meeting, producer made sexist comment. "So stunned, didn't call him out. We'll speak up next time. Hashtag how I will change." Called another dude out for catcalling a woman. Surprised how easy it was. Hashtag how I will change. Always remember, the standard I walk past is the standard I accept. The standard I walk past is the standard I accept. I'm not going to walk past hashtag how I will change. God is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in time of trouble. A few years ago, this church put together a safe church policy. You can read it online. It's on our website. It's easy to find. We were led by Dr. Jaime Romo, who is a victim of childhood abuse and who today runs workshops locally to educate people so they can declare themselves to have their churches be known as safe churches. He says, "I'll tell you a secret. If we want to be trusted, we need to be clear about our boundaries and our role and our authority. If we want people to believe in us, then we have to take an active role to prevent abuse and to create the kinds of environments where people are safe and where people are healthy." Here's a new reform for our reformed and reforming churches, where we say, never place a period where God has placed a comma. I think it's safe to say that this is a place where God, yes, has placed a period. Amen.